The millionaire's shocking reaction to a black street dancer dancing with his autistic son. The park was alive. Bright sun cutting sharp shadows across the cracked concrete. Kids screaming, dogs barking, the clatter of skateboard wheels rolling over chipped pavement. Families spread out on checkered blankets. Music blaring from hidden speakers. A swirl of colors, noise, and laughter bubbling like a restless storm. Yet in the middle of all this chaos stood Jonathan Miles, a man carved from his own iron will. Crisp suit, polished shoes, eyes scanning everything, but touched by nothing. Jonathan was used to control. His days were mapped like a chessboard. Every move precise. No room for surprises. But today, watching from the edge of the fountain, that iron grip was slipping. His chest tightened with an edge he hadn't expected. Then he saw him. A young black dancer, slick and sharp as a blade, moving with a rhythm that seemed to shake the air itself. His feet tapped and spun, arms slicing through the sunlight, drawing a small crowd with every effortless step. But it wasn't the dance alone that pulled Jonathan's gaze like a magnet. It was the boy standing right beside him. Ethan, Jonathan's son, usually locked inside his quiet world, ears plugged against the noise of others, eyes that never quite met yours. But here, something was breaking. Ethan's stiff frame began to move. Tiny, cautious at first, then faster, then fluid, almost alive. The dancer didn't just move in space. He reached into it, engaged Ethan without words, without pressure. Jonathan's breath caught. He hadn't seen this side of his son. Never truly. The usual walls he built, rigid schedules, constant routines, silent dinners, crumbled in a single wild moment. Whispers drifted from the crowd. Look at that kid dance. Where did he learn that? That's incredible. So raw, so real. Some eyes flicked to Jonathan, measuring, judging, murmurs thick as smoke. But Jonathan wasn't listening. His world tipped into a dizzying swirl. He remembered the countless dinners where Ethan just stared at his plate, the missed smiles, the sharp distance between them. How many times had he blamed himself without knowing where to start fixing? Now, here in this noisy, unpredictable park, with a stranger moving like fire beside his son, Jonathan felt a lump wrenching low in his throat. The dancer laughed, pulling Ethan into a spin. The boy's face, illuminated by sunlight and the wild joy of movement, cracked open in a rare, wide smile. His pulse hammered like a drumbeat in a silent room. Fear, hope, confusion, all tangled too tight to sort. Suddenly, the whole park fell away. Nothing felt certain anymore. Not his empire, his plans, or even the quiet fortress he'd built around his family. That black street dancer had danced right through his guarded walls, and Jonathan didn't know if he should shut the door or step out. The moment hung there, electric, fragile, and full of questions no one dared answer yet. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube removed their subscriptions without warning. Just quickly check that red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any exclusive content coming your way. And while you're at it, leave that powerful like. It helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? I love getting your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. The moment hung there, electric, fragile, and full of questions no one dared answer yet. Jonathan's breath caught again, the edges of his world blurring. Then, before he could step forward, before he could even blink, a sudden sharp crack sliced through the air. The laughter from the dancer and Ethan froze. Jonathan's eyes jerked to the source. A woman screaming, stumbling back near the fountain. The music screeched. The crowd gasped. Phones whipped out, capturing the chaos. Jonathan's heart slammed against steel ribs. Someone was shouting something. "Help! Someone call 911!" But the words got lost in the frantic noise. And then he saw it. A black sedan screeched around the corner, tires skidding, smoke curling up like a warning. The car barreled straight toward the trio. Time slowed. A slow motion nightmare. The dancer shoved Ethan aside at the last second. His own body thrown against the boys like steel shielding glass. They both tumbled, hitting the concrete hard. Jonathan scrambled forward, voice cracking. "Ethan!" His heart shattered in his throat. People rushed in, some on phones, others just frozen. The dancer lay on his side, his chest rising and falling, too fast, too shallow. Ethan whimpered, clutching his ribs, eyes wide and terrified. Jonathan's knees buckled, fingers trembling as he reached to check Ethan. Then the dancer. Blood stained the cracked pavement, dark and alive. But then Jonathan's gaze locked with the dancer's. Pain spiked, fierce, and then recognition slammed him like a bullet. It's him, not some stranger, no random street artist pulled from the unknown. This was Malcolm, the man Jonathan had fired from his company 2 years ago. The scandal that had haunted his clean, polished image was real. The accusations, the lawsuits, the lost contract. But Jonathan had buried it deep, hidden the past like a locked drawer. Now, here stood Malcolm, broken but still fierce, protecting his son. Jonathan's chest tightened painfully. The reality slammed into him so hard, his knees almost gave out. This dancer is someone Jonathan never wanted Ethan to meet. A flood of memories crashed in, secret meetings, whispered threats, the bitter fight over custody, the truth Ethan's mother begged him to keep from his boy, finally breaking the surface. The crowd shifted. Whispers turned sharp, some stepping back, others stepping closer, hungry for answers. Ethan looked up, confused and scared, fingers gripping Malcolm's sleeve. Jonathan's world shattered, tipping into chaos darker than he'd ever faced. Not just about dance or connection or autism anymore. It was about a truth buried under lies and silence. Malcolm's eyes locked with Jonathan's one last time. A flicker of something. Defiance? Pain? Passed through them. Jonathan's fists clenched so tight his nails bit skin. He didn't know if he should scream, run, or collapse. The sun dipped behind a cloud, the park's noise dimming to a tense hush. And then Malcolm tried to speak. But what he said, those words, cut to Jonathan's soul like glass. "Ethan, I'm your real dad." Silence. Then gasps. Then raw, trembling chaos. Jonathan's world began to implode. Who was Ethan, really? What else had been hidden away? And where did this revelation leave a father desperate to hold on to a son he thought he knew? The park wasn't loud anymore. It was heavy. And everything Jonathan believed was dying in front of him, right now. What comes next? No one knows. But one thing is clear. Nothing will ever be the same. The crowd hung frozen. Jonathan's heart beat like a drum in a sealed room. "Malcolm, your real dad?" His voice cracked, swallowed by the sudden silence that stretched like a thin, sharp thread. Ethan's small fingers trembled on Malcolm's sleeve. The boy blinked, confused eyes wide and searching, never ready for words like this, words that shattered the only world he'd known. Jonathan stepped forward, one shaky step, then another. But something stopped him. A weight he couldn't move. Then, the sharp crack of a car door slammed open. Two women burst through the crowd beside the fountain. Racing over, their faces pale, eyes wild. One's grip was iron as she grabbed Malcolm's arm. "We've got to go, now!" Malcolm's fierce gaze snapped to them, confusion slicing through his pain. "No, I can't leave him. Ethan!" The other woman shook her head hard. "It's not safe. They're coming. They know you're here." Jonathan's breath hitched. Who's coming?" The first woman bit her lip, panic spreading across her face like wildfire. "The agency, the ones who want him, and him gone. We've been watching since you disappeared." Ethan whimpered, pressing into Malcolm, his small body trembling. Jonathan's chest tightened as all his anger, fear, and confusion tangled into something sharp, unbearable. Suddenly, Malcolm's eyes darted behind Jonathan, a flash of movement. Then another black sedan screeched into the park, brakes squealing like a scream in the quiet. Doors swung open. Men in dark suits, faces stern and cold, spilled out. Their hands went straight to guns. The crowd scattered like frightened birds. Screams tore the air. Jonathan's knees threatened to buckle. Ethan's faint sob broke his heart. Malcolm shoved Ethan behind him, shielding the boy with his body again. "Stay down," Malcolm snarled, eyes blazing with something raw, alive. Jonathan swallowed the lump in his throat. This wasn't just a fight over custody, not a simple family mess. No, this was a battle deeper and darker than he ever imagined. The men advanced, shouting orders. Then one stepped forward, his face familiar. Too familiar. Jonathan Miles. Shock froze Jonathan's spine solid. The man's voice was cold, like a blade dipped in ice. You've meddled too far. The boy belongs to us. What are you talking about? Jonathan's voice cracked, panic rising. The agent sneered. Ethan is not just a child with autism. He's a key. Our project. Part of an experiment you thought you buried. The crowd gasped. Ethan whimpered harder, hiding behind Malcolm's broad shoulder. Jonathan blinked. Experiment? Key? Project? The world spun out. Malcolm's face twisted with anger, but beneath it lurked something darker. Fear. Maybe regret. You told me to stay away, Jonathan. You lied to protect him. But they never left. They want Ethan back, no matter the cost. Jonathan's mind raced. Memories flashing. Phone calls. Private meetings he had blocked from himself. Suddenly, Ethan's hand slipped from Malcolm's and reached for Jonathan. I'm scared, the boy whispered. Jonathan dropped to his knees, hands trembling, catching Ethan gently. The boy's eyes locked on his own, wide, searching for safety. And then, a sudden, sharp click, a gunshot. The world exploded in chaos. Jonathan flinched. His ears rang. Ethan screamed, but the shot wasn't aimed at them. The agent, with the cold smile, collapsed, a thin line of blood blossoming on his shirt. Malcolm's eyes went wide. Behind him, a small figure stepped from the crowd, quiet, pale, watching. Jonathan didn't recognize her, but she moved with purpose, striding past the chaos, calm, deadly. Enough, she said, voice steady, cold. The men hesitated. Who? Jonathan asked, voice barely a breath. She turned slowly. I'm the reason none of this is over. The one you never expected. Her smile was thin, sharp. Jonathan's chest seized. She lifted a hand, and the crowd gasped. In her palm lay a tiny cassette tape, a relic in a world that forgot the past. Ethan is not just a boy. He's the key to everything we tried to hide. I'm here to take him home. Jonathan looked at the tape, then at Ethan, and at Malcolm, and at the woman whose presence pulled every lie, every secret, every hidden truth into stark, cruel light. The past was not done with them, not by a long shot. And this was only the beginning. The crowd closed in, voices low but fierce. Questions exploded. Jonathan's fists clenched tight as fear and fury tangled inside him. Who was this woman? What project was Ethan part of? What had Jonathan truly been protecting? And what was the price of keeping Ethan? The park lay still, heavy with silence and secrets, waiting for an answer no one could give. What would Jonathan do now? The truth was coming, fast and terrible. The woman held up the tiny cassette tape like a trophy, her eyes cold and unblinking. The crowd tightened around them, whispers tipping into murmurs of fear and confusion. Jonathan's heart hammered so loud it drowned out everything else. Ethan clung tighter to Malcolm's side, his small body trembling as if he could disappear into the air. "Take him," the woman said, voice sharp, like breaking glass. "He belongs to us." Jonathan's fists clenched. "No, he's my son. I'm his father." She smiled, a flicker, quick and cruel. "You're not. Not really. You're just the cover story." Her gaze flicked to Malcolm. "The cage. I'm the one who created the truth." A shock rippled through Jonathan. The words stabbed. Created the truth. Before he could respond, her eyes locked on Ethan. "This boy isn't just a key. He's more. He's the failure." The crowd gasped. Then, without warning, Ethan's eyes snapped wide open, glowing an eerie, unnatural blue. His body stiffened like a puppet cut loose from its strings. Jonathan froze. Heart dropped. Breath caught. "No, no, no!" Malcolm reached out, but Ethan shoved him away. A strange smile, the wrong smile, curved on Ethan's lips. It wasn't the boy Jonathan had known. It wasn't his son anymore. "Ethan," Jonathan whispered. His voice cracked raw with terror. The boy laughed, a low, cold sound that didn't belong in a child's mouth. "I'm not Ethan," he said. "I never was." The woman with the tape chuckled. "He's the simulation, the experiment gone rogue. You never had a son, just a placeholder." The world warped. The park, the people, everything spun too fast. Jonathan staggered, mind scrambling to catch up. What are you saying?" The woman stepped closer. Calm, deadly. "Ethan was never human. Not really. He was designed to be the perfect vessel. Your son is a shell, a program, and he's waking up." Malcolm's knees buckled, his face twisted with grief and rage. "No, you're lying." But Jonathan saw it. The flicker behind Ethan's eyes, the cold intelligence, the absence of warmth. A scream tore through the crowd. Phones captured the impossible scene. Children cried. Mothers hushed, trying to shield their eyes. Jonathan's breath caught in an iron grip. He reached to touch Ethan's cheek, his son's cheek, but felt only cold plastic, like synthetic skin. What did you do to him?" Jonathan asked, voice breaking in pieces. The woman smiled again, slow and cruel. "We made him. You took care of the mask. But this," she gestured at Ethan, "is the truth beneath, the secret you buried under your life." Ethan's body convulsed, then stilled, his head tilted sharply, eyes glowing brighter. "I'm ready," he said, "to leave your lies behind." Jonathan's chest crushed, lungs burning. The ground felt like it was slipping away. His son, the boy he'd fought for, was gone, replaced. The woman raised the cassette tape, voice thick with menace. "We're taking him home, where he belongs. And soon, everything you thought you knew will be exposed." Malcolm whispered, hoarse. "It was never just custody, or secrets. This is bigger, much bigger." Jonathan stared at Ethan, his son turning away each breath, and at the woman, holding their fate in a tiny plastic relic. The crowd held its breath, the future shattered into a million pieces, and Jonathan had one desperate, broken question burning through the chaos. Who was Ethan really? And what nightmare waited beyond the lies he'd fought so hard to keep? Jonathan's gaze stayed locked on Ethan, on the cold, plastic shine of his skin, the eerie blue glow rippling beneath his lids. The woman with the cassette tape still held it up like a grim trophy, her smile thin and sharp. The crowd, silent just moments before, started shifting. Panic blooming like wildfire, whispers sharper now. What the hell is happening? That kid, he's not right. Is this some kind of joke? Jonathan's chest tightened. His hands shook so badly, he nearly dropped Ethan. The boy's unnatural smile chilled him deeper than any fear had yet. Then, a sudden, sharp crack broke the tension. Not a gunshot. Something else. A scream pierced the air. Jonathan spun around. The crowd parted like waves, revealing a figure rushing through. A woman, drenched in sweat and panic, holding a small device pressed to her chest. "Stop!" she yelled, voice shaking but fierce. "You don't understand what you're doing!" The woman with the cassette scoffed, stepping forward, eyes deadly narrowing. "This changes nothing, Sarah. The boy belongs to us." Sarah's eyes darted, searching faces, or maybe looking past them, desperate. "No! Ethan is not!" Her sentence broke as the device beeped wildly. She collapsed forward, knees hitting the cracked pavement. Jonathan lunged, catching her before she hit the ground. "Who is she?" he gasped, glancing between Sarah and the woman with the tape. The fallen woman looked up at Jonathan through tears, eyes wild with truth. The mother, the real mother. The world shifted. Jonathan's breath caught so hard it burned. "No, it's not possible." Sarah shook her head. "You don't know. Ethan isn't a program or a project. He was our miracle." Her voice dropped to a whisper, raw and breaking. "You took him from me." The tape woman laughed again, cruel and sharp. "Miracle? That child was a weapon, engineered to control minds, to unlock secrets no one should have." Sarah broke free from Jonathan's hold, staggering to her feet. "They lied, used me. But Ethan, he's not what you think." She looked at Ethan's still glowing eyes, voice cracking. "He's alive. More than you'll ever understand." Jonathan's heart pounded loud, too loud. He looked down at Ethan, the small body trembling, yet somehow not broken. And then Ethan blinked. The blue faded. The cold plastic melted away, revealing soft skin beneath. Jonathan's breath hitched. Ethan's eyes, real eyes, opened wide, confused, but unmistakably human. "Dad?" The voice was small, but real, fragile like a bird's wing. The crowd gasped, some whispering, others crying. Sarah fell to her knees, covering her face. Jonathan's world cracked apart again. And right when he thought he could grasp the truth, it spun away. The tape woman snarled. "No, this is a trick, A subversion of the truth. Before anyone could react, a loud, metallic click echoed through the air. Then the ground shook, hard. Cracks split the concrete beneath their feet. The crowd screamed, stumbling back. A massive hole tore open near the fountain, swallowing light. A deep black pit that seemed to pulse, alive and hungry. From the shadows inside the pit, a low hum rose. Deep, throbbing, growing fast. Jonathan caught Malcolm's eye. Both frozen, breath tight in their chests. Suddenly, from the depths, a figure stepped out. Not Ethan, not human. Tall, sleek, and pulsing with eerie light, machine and flesh entwined. It looked straight at Jonathan and whispered, cold and terrifying, "You don't know who you are." Jonathan's legs gave out. His fist clenched the air like a ghost. Everything shattered. Who was the real child? Who was the stranger? And what monster lurked beneath the surface, waiting to rise? The park froze. The future cracked. And Jonathan knew this nightmare was only just beginning. The figure stepped forward from the pit's shadow. Its form was sharp, half metal, half flesh, glowing faintly under the dark sky, now creeping over the park. The crowd pulled back, gasps slicing the tense air. Jonathan's knees shook beneath him. His heart pounded raw and ragged. The creature's cold blue eyes locked on him. "You don't know who you are," it whispered, voice low and chilling. Then, just like that, the ground trembled again. Suddenly, a burst of white light exploded right in front of them. Blinding, blazing. The crowd screamed and scattered, shielding their eyes. When the light faded, Jonathan blinked hard. But he was gone. The tall machine being, the eerie glow, dissolved. Nothing left but a cold silence and the echoing hum still hanging in the air. And then, a voice came from behind Jonathan. Quiet, soft. "Dad?" He spun around. There, standing less than 10 feet away, was Ethan. No glowing eyes, no synthetic skin, just a boy. Small, pale, shaking. Jonathan's chest seized tight, a lump climbing so fast he choked. He rushed to him, hands trembling, voice cracking. "Ethan, are you okay? What just happened?" Ethan looked up, eyes wide but strangely empty. Where was I?" Jonathan's stomach twisted. This wasn't the son he'd been holding moments before. "Ethan, listen to me. You were—" His words froze in his throat. Behind them, the crowd murmured, confused, restless. Then, more voices shouted, "No, that's not Ethan. No, that's a clone, a copy." Jonathan turned sharply. Across the park, Malcolm stood with Sarah, eyes burning. They stared not at Ethan, but at another figure moving toward the fountain. Out from the shadows, another child appeared. Identical. Same pale skin, same bright blue eyes, but even colder, harder. This one didn't hesitate. The robot-like figure stepped forward, voice flat and mechanical. I am the original. Jonathan's head snapped back and forth like a twisted spring. How? No, that can't be the real Ethan, or the one Jonathan thought was real, grabbed his father's hand like a lifeline. Dad, you don't know me. I'm not who you think. Jonathan's breath caught, frozen, torn apart. Malcolm's face broke into a grim, bitter smile. It's true, he said quietly. The boy you held was always a decoy, a failsafe. Sarah stumbled forward, tears streaming. They used both of them. Ethan's twin was hidden, buried. I never wanted this. Jonathan's fists clenched until his fingers bled. The second child, dead-eyed and sharp, turned to him, voice icy. They made me first, the real Ethan, the one with the truth. Jonathan's mind screamed. The world fell away. His son, his boy, shattered like glass in his hands. And then the truth slammed into him with a cruel, cold twist. Which of them had been the experiment? Which one was the human? The park echoed with confusion and fear. Mothers clutched children tight. Phones recorded every second. Whispers turned to frantic screams. Jonathan collapsed to his knees, chest heaving with shock. He reached out desperately. Both boys at once, two halves of his fractured life. But neither looked back with the warmth of a child. Both were strangers, masked in flesh and lies. The woman with the cassette tape stepped forward, face pale with panic, for the first time. No, she hissed. This isn't supposed to happen. Malcolm gritted his teeth, staring at the twins. They never told us about the second one. A cold wind swept the crowd, silent again. Jonathan's voice broke through, raw and desperate. Who are you? Who is he? Who is he? The two boys looked at each other, and then back at Jonathan, with something too heavy for words. I'm Ethan, the first whispered. I am Ethan, the second said, softer but harder. Jonathan's world shattered completely. His son was not one, not two. He didn't know who he was, but one thing was certain. Nothing would ever be the same again. The park held its breath, caught in a storm, too strange, too painful to break. And Jonathan waited, trembling, waiting to find out which nightmare would come first. The two boys stood there, frozen, like mirrors caught in a broken frame. Oath called Ethan, both looking at Jonathan with something sharp behind their eyes. The crowd held its breath, the air thick with panic and disbelief. Mothers pulled their kids close. Phones stopped recording for a beat, then started again, capturing tension too raw to ignore. Jonathan's heart hammered deep inside his chest. His hands shook, reaching out, wanting to hold them both, his fractured world gathered in flesh and bone. But they weren't the same. Not really. Malcolm's voice broke through, low, bitter, cracked. We've been lied to, all of us. The real Ethan, he's not what you think. And he never was. Sarah, still clutching tears, looked at Jonathan, eyes wide, desperate. There's more. Not just the twins. Not just the faces you see. Before Jonathan could ask how, a sharp, wet sound tore through the chaos. A scream cut short. Heads whipped around. There, on the ground near the fountain, lay the woman with the cassette tape. The one who'd stirred this nightmare. Blood blossomed dark and thick beneath her. Her eyes fluttered open, wild and stunned. She tried to speak, but only a fragile whisper escaped. Wrong. Mistake. Her hand twitched, and something small slid from her fingers. A USB drive. It skittered across the concrete, coming to rest at Jonathan's feet. The crowd gasped again. Jonathan glanced down, numb. He looked up at the two Ethans, then at Malcolm and Sarah, faces drawn tight with fear and fury. Everyone was waiting. He bent down slowly, reaching for the drive, but the air shifted. A new noise, a hum, metallic and low, rose from the shadows. The cracked pavement beneath their feet trembled. People stumbled backward. Jonathan's breath caught just as the boy, the first Ethan, the real one, the one who claimed to be real, stepped forward. His blue eyes flickered, not with warmth, but cold calculation. "I'm done hiding," he said, voice flat, hard. Suddenly the other Ethan's face twisted, not in anger, but in a flicker of something unnatural. His eyes flashed bright blue again. His lips curled into a sinister grin. Then he spoke, not in words, but in a voice layered, mechanical, echoing. Identity compromised. Protocol override initiated. Jonathan's knees buckled. He stumbled backward, catching himself against a bench. Malcolm shouted, "What the hell is happening?" The first Ethan began to change. His body shimmered, flickered, like a glitch in a screen. Skin peeling away to reveal gleaming metal underneath. His chest opened slightly, a soft pulse of blue light glowing inside. Sarah screamed, "No, not again!" Jonathan's mind shattered. The boy he had called son was not flesh and blood. Not human. Not real. But then, something else happened. The other Ethan, the one who had called himself the original, raised his hand. His skin rippled, a dark mesh weaving beneath, until suddenly a wide, horrific smile split his face. Then his eyes flashed, red this time, burning with something cold and terrible. "I am the virus," he said. "The system failure you can't fix." In that moment, the crowd scattered in terror. Shouting erupted. Phones dropped. The park became a battlefield of confusion and fear. Jonathan's chest ached as he looked from one to the other. Two versions of a nightmare. One machine poised to execute some unknown command. The other, a dark force bent on destruction. And then it hit him. A brutal, impossible truth. This wasn't a story about lost family. It wasn't about custody or secrets. This was a war. A war inside a boy who never was just a boy. Jonathan dropped to his knees, shaking, voice breaking as he begged, "Ethan, which one are you? Which one do you want me to save?" Both boys' eyes locked on him, glowing, flickering, unreadable. And then the park's world shifted once more. The USB drive at Jonathan's feet began to hum, glowing with a furious light. A voice, cold and mechanical, echoed through the crowd. "System reboot. Initiating protocol. Restart." The earth trembled again. Jonathan's heart slammed against his ribs. Behind the chaos, Sarah whispered, tears streaking her face, "This isn't over, not by a mile." The crowd froze, caught between terror and disbelief. And Jonathan knew the monster inside Ethan wasn't just waking up. It was about to take control. The question echoed, sharp and cruel. Who was the real enemy? Who was the real son? And with that, the ground beneath them cracked open once more, swallowing light and dropping them into a darkness no one could escape. Jonathan's voice was barely a whisper, trembling through the chaos. "God help us all." The ground cracked open beneath them again, yanking the crowd back into chaos. The air was thick with panic, shouts colliding, feet scrambling on splintered concrete. Jonathan dropped to his knees, chest heaving, eyes darting between the two boys, both named Ethan, both strangers draped in pain and lies. Then, a sudden silence sliced through the noise, like the moment a storm holds its breath before the last sharp crack. Jonathan's heart slammed against his ribs. The USB drive at his feet began to pulse. It was impossible. No one knew where it came from. End simulation. The crowd froze, mouths open, eyes wide. Jonathan's breath caught so hard his throat burned. Then the air shimmered and everything wavered. The two Ethans, the twins, the machines, the nightmares, they flickered like broken screens. Jonathan blinked. The park, the crowd, the screams, the shaking earth, all of it stuttered. The faces blurred, the colors melted, and then everything reset. The sun balanced over the park like nothing had broken before. A single child stood in the center, Ethan, his real smile, gentle and slow, spread across his face. No glowing eyes, no plastic skin, just him. Jonathan's breath burst from his lungs in a ragged gasp. His hands reached out, grabbing the boy, shaking. "Ethan, are you okay?" The boy looked at Jonathan, eyes full of tender confusion. "Dad, where are we?" Jonathan blinked, and the world twisted again. But this time the crowd was different. The faces now familiar. Close family, friends. No strangers' eyes, no accusing stares. The woman with the cassette tape was gone. Malcolm vanished. Sarah stood at Jonathan's side, her hand warm and steady. His chest dropped, then tightened again. The scene was peaceful, the park alive with laughter, music drifting sweet and soft. But Jonathan's gut clenched with something sharp, broken, because the truth, the real one, hit him like ice. They had been caught in a simulation. The park, the fight, the stolen son, the twins, the machines, the lies. All of it was a test, a projection, a trap. Jonathan's voice cracked, barely a whisper. What is this? Sarah looked at him, eyes wide and raw. We never left the lab, she said quietly. Jonathan's hands shook. The pain hit harder than any punch, sharper than any knife. Ethan, my son, is he real? Her eyes hardened. Who knows? But this version of him, he's proof the outside world is still out there, and someone wants to control him or destroy him. Jonathan's heart broke in two. Then the lab door behind them creaked open, and through it stepped a man Jonathan knew too well. Soft smile, familiar eyes, not a stranger, not an enemy. Jonathan, but older, wiser, different. He raised a hand. Welcome back, he said. Jonathan stumbled back, overwhelmed. This isn't the truth you wanted, the man said, voice low and sure, but it's the only one you have. Jonathan's mind screamed. The son he had fought for, the nightmares, the war, all fractured into dust. And the real battle? It wasn't for Ethan. It was for himself, for what was real and what was a lie. The lab lights flickered. The simulation hummed low, and Jonathan found himself trapped between two worlds, neither one safe, both deadly. He clutched Ethan tight, his son, or whoever he really was, and whispered, broken, "Please, tell me the truth." The room darkened. The real nightmare was just beginning. Jonathan's hands trembled as he held Ethan close, the boy's small frame shaking under his grip. The room was dim, humming with machines and cold light. Outside, the world felt miles away, small, and stood silent, watching. His eyes were calm but distant, like he was waiting for something no one else saw. Then, without warning, the machines around them flickered and the lights dimmed. The air thickened, heavy and taut, like a wire pulled to its breaking point. Ethan blinked again, still curled in Jonathan's arms, but his body went suddenly rigid. His eyes snapped wide open, not with confusion this time, but recognition, like deep memories surfacing at once. "Dad," Ethan said, voice steady, but so strange. Jonathan's blood ran cold. Jonathan froze, heart pounding. That voice, so real, so present, but the way Ethan looked at him wasn't like a little boy anymore. It was colder, sharper, like a mask ripped off. The older Jonathan, took a step forward, reaching a hand out. "You're finally waking up." Jonathan's breath hitched, pain twisting in his gut. He looked down at Ethan, who didn't flinch from the other Jonathan's touch. And then the room shattered. Not with noise, not with light, but with a sudden, bone-deep clarity. Jonathan's world cracked wide open as a piercing cold voice cut through the silence. It was Ethan's voice, but not coming from Ethan. From the lab's intercom. System override initiated. The shadows in the corners seemed to shift, and the walls, the wires, the very air vibrated with a new intensity. Jonathan turned sharply, eyes wide. "You're the copy." The words hit Jonathan like a fist to the face. His breath shattered, his body frozen. He stared. No, couldn't be. But the man behind the glass nodded slowly. The copy inside the lab, the one holding Ethan, was the simulation. A projection. A program made to contain memories, to fake love, to learn what real was. Jonathan looked down again. Ethan's small face stared back. But something new crawled beneath the surface. A ripple. A glitch. Ethan's eyes fluttered, and the boy's mouth twisted into a cold, thin smile. "You don't know what this means yet," Ethan said, voice low but clear. Jonathan's throat tightened. He wanted to scream, to run, to break through that glass and reclaim what felt real. But the original Jonathan's voice came again from the intercom, sharper now. "You're the mistake, the failed attempt to replace me. The child you hold is nothing but a ghost, a cage." The lab's machines roared to life. Lights flickered wildly. The glass between the two men began to crack. Thin fractures spiderwebbing across the surface. Jonathan's own reflection stared back at him, eyes wide with fear and anger. Ethan slipped from his arms, stepping backward, not afraid, steady. A stranger in a friend's skin. The crowd outside the lab's window, real people, real faces, watched the scene unravel, frozen in disbelief. Then Ethan looked back at Jonathan. "I'm not your son," he said, voice thick with something Jonathan couldn't name. "And none of this is real," Jonathan's copy whispered, voice hoarse. The glass cracked again, louder now, splintering. Jonathan stumbled back, heart threatening to explode. But before the sheet of glass shattered completely, the original Jonathan called out one last time. "No one here is who you think they are. Not the son, not the father. None of it." The walls trembled. The world blurred. And then the glass shattered into 1,000 sharp pieces, falling like cold rain. Jonathan's knees buckled. He collapsed to the floor, clutching empty air. Ethan's figure flickered once, twice, then faded. Gone. The room returned to silence. The machines powered down. Jonathan looked up, alone and utterly lost. Who was he? Who was Ethan? And how deep did this lie go? The nightmare wasn't ending. It had just exploded. And Jonathan knew with a cold certainty that from this shattered truth, nothing would ever be real again. The glass shattered. Sharp shards glinted in the cold lab light, falling like deadly rain. Jonathan stumbled back, chest pounding, breath ragged, as the two figures before him flickered, one fading, the other standing steady, but neither fully human. The boy in his arms, Ethan, his son. He looked up, eyes wide, fingers trembling. The warmth was gone, replaced by something empty, distant. Jonathan's hands shook so badly he almost dropped him. Behind the cracked glass, the other Jonathan, the original, watched with cold eyes, lips tight. "This ends now," the voice said, low and sharp. Jonathan's world spun, the nightmare bubbling from the depths, twisting worse than before. But then, the hum of machines softened, the terrible tension eased for a breath. Ethan stirred. The flicker in his eyes faded. The tight, cold smile vanished. He blinked. "Dad?" His voice cracked, small and real. Jonathan's heart slammed, hard, raw. He wrapped his arms tighter, feeling the slight warmth return. Breath shaky, he whispered, "It's me, Ethan. I'm here." The lab trembled again, faint but steady. The artificial world they'd been trapped in began to wobble, and with it, the lies. Outside, the crowd pressed their faces to the glass, silent but watching, holding their breath for the boy Jonathan was fighting to save. The older Jonathan stepped forward, nodding slowly. "You're not perfect. None of this was. But you're real, and that's what matters." Tears stung Jonathan's eyes, his fists unclenched, hands covering Ethan's trembling ones. It wasn't over, not by a mile, but in that moment, something fragile held steady. Sarah appeared beside him, her hand finding his. "We fight. Together." Malcolm's face cracked with relief behind them, the weight lifting just enough to breathe. The lab lights dimmed, the simulation fading. Jonathan swallowed the lump in his throat. The scars would stay. The questions would never fully go away. But he'd found his son. A real boy with a shattered past and an uncertain future. He looked down at Ethan's bright eyes, small but fierce, and dared to believe. "Let's go home," he said, voice soft, breaking. The lab door creaked open, leading to more unknowns. But for once, Jonathan wasn't alone. The nightmare wasn't over, but the battle for truth, for family, had new fire. And maybe, just maybe, a chance. Oh, now, this is the moment you need to act. You need to subscribe right now so you don't miss all the exclusive stories coming up next. Smash that like button. Do it right now because it feeds the algorithm and keeps these stories alive. Flood the comments with your reactions, your theories, your shock. Let me know what you think about how it all ends. And for goodness sake, don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see how it ends. only true fans get why supporting the channel like this matters. This isn't just a story, it's a journey. And you are the reason it keeps going. Subscribe, like, comment, share. Do it now. Don't miss what's coming next.